You're tuned into That's Life, where we celebrate the beauty, the chaos, and the wonder of real life. Sometimes it makes you laugh, sometimes it makes you cry, but it always makes you feel. Settle in. We're just getting started. Every evening, turning towards home, Eleanor involuntarily slowed her pace. The children's home was tucked away after the last bend, and in the twilight, the children often played on the playground. Seeing passers-by, they would reach toward the fence, their eyes full of unspoken pleading, and the bravest would whisper, "Auntie, are you my mommy?" The young woman's heart tightened with pain every time. She could have changed her route, avoided those gazes, but the desire to become a mother was all-consuming. The bitterness of knowing she would never have her own child was so sharp that she couldn't give up this agonizing moment when a stranger, an abandoned child, would ask, "Are you looking for me?" That day, as usual, she stopped, glancing at the playground with a mixture of fear and strange hope. The children were engrossed in their game. Only one little boy in a bright red jacket stood alone by the fence. He looked up at the approaching woman and remained silent. But there was so much silent pleading in his gaze that Eleanor's heart stopped. While she walked past, his eyes followed her relentlessly. She came home in complete confusion, and her husband immediately noticed her state. George asked sympathetically, "Ellie, what's wrong? You look terrible." "George, I need to talk to you seriously," Eleanor began hesitantly, but the words caught in her throat. She took a deep breath. "I want to tell you." Her husband smiled, noticing her hesitation. "Ellie, you're so hesitant, so unsure. What's happened? Can it be something so important that it could completely turn our lives upside down? You know, Gio, that I'll never have children, don't you?" "Ellie, why rake up the past? We've already talked about this, accepted our sorrow. Why keep coming back to this topic?" "Gio, please listen to me completely before you object. Every day I walk past the children's home where abandoned children live. They are needed by no one except those who are ready to love them." Eleanor spoke faster. "Today I saw a boy there, very small. He was just standing and looking at me, and his eyes turned my whole soul inside out. Gio, I want to adopt him. He will be our son." George grunted hesitantly, considering what he had heard. "I somehow never thought about this. You say unwanted children. But would normal parents abandon their children?" "Oh, Gio, I know what you're thinking. Of course, it's frightening, but there are tragedies, accidents, different circumstances. Not all children there have bad heredity or come from troubled parents." Eleanor looked at her husband pleadingly. "But Georgie, please, let's go together tomorrow and see this boy." They returned to this conversation all evening, and even before bed, already lying down, they started talking about the sore subject again. The next day, George met his wife after work, and they walked the familiar road together. Eleanor walked with a pounding heart, anxious. What if her husband doesn't like him? What if he's already been taken? What if we don't recognize him among the other children? But the boy stood in the same place as the day before. The couple approached the fence, trying to talk to him, but he just remained silent, looking plaintively with his large gray-blue eyes. Then they decided to go inside and talk to the director. Mrs. Miller told them the boy's sad story. His parents died in an accident, and until recently, he had lived with his grandmother. A few days ago, his grandmother died of a heart attack, unable to bear the loss of her daughter. The boy had no other relatives left. The boy's name is Michael. He is smart, healthy, but very lonely. He doesn't know about his parents' death and is still waiting for their return. And yesterday, he came back from his walk and told me, Mrs. Miller added, and her voice trembled. I saw an auntie. That's probably my mommy. She's looking for me and can't find me. I'll always stand there and wait. That auntie, who is my mommy, will definitely come and find me. At these words, Eleanor couldn't hold back and burst into tears, unable to stop for a long time. Her husband awkwardly comforted her, though tears also glistened in his eyes. Leaving the director's office, they knew for sure they would return and take Michael. Soon their life changed completely. A son appeared in their family, their beloved Michael, the smartest, most capable, most precious boy. Years flew by unnoticed, like a whistle in the ears from passing days. The parents didn't notice how Michael grew up, finished school and university, went into business, and became a successful man. Now they didn't have to count every penny as they did before, when they lived on two modest salaries of a nurse and a plumber. Back then, they couldn't afford much, but they always found the means for Michael to feed him better, dress him no worse than others, send him on summer holidays. Meanwhile, they themselves had to deny themselves much. Now their son, as if in gratitude, tried to give his parents everything best. For the first time, they went on holiday abroad, exchanged their old apartment for a new one, bought a large dacha, and a new car. And then one day, Michael brought his bride to meet them, a modest, sweet girl named Sarah. Soon after, without excessive luxury, they had a wedding, and the young couple went on their honeymoon. The happy parents eagerly awaited grandchildren. In the evenings, they loved to guess who would be born to their beloved Mikey, a boy or a girl. Eleanor imagined walking with a stroller, baking pies, having a fun time at the dacha with the little ones. Sometimes she and her husband argued about the number and gender of future grandchildren. The grandmother, of course, dreamed of the first granddaughter, a beauty with big bows in her blonde hair. And the grandfather was sure that the first would be a grandson with whom he could go fishing and to the garage. But the young couple returned, and no changes were noticeable in Sarah's slender figure. At times, the parents shyly hinted to their son and daughter-in-law that it was time to have a baby, but the young couple just remained silent. Several years passed, and the long-awaited grandchildren still didn't arrive. One day, Eleanor couldn't stand it and asked her son directly, "Mikey, when are you going to make us happy with grandchildren? We want to cuddle them so much. Why are you putting it off? After all, you're doing great financially. Sarah is working too. Is it because of your careers?" Her son blinked in confusion, answering awkwardly, "Mom, Sarah was given a discouraging diagnosis. She will never be able to become a mother. We've already come to terms with it. What can you do? Perhaps it was meant to be." He added, looking at his mother, "But I love Sarah and will never leave her. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's already painful for us." The elderly woman's heart ached at these words. Could history be repeating itself? A few days later, Eleanor walked the familiar road again, one she hadn't walked for many years. And again, before the turn to the children's home, her chest tightened painfully. She took the last step and stopped. Children were still playing on the playground, some running up to the fence, looking through the bars at passers-by with hope and anxiety. And again, just like then, many years ago, tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. She so wanted to hug and pity all these unfortunate fate-deprived children. A few days later, she came here with her daughter-in-law. Both women, the older and the younger, stood by the fence for a long time, watching the children. A little girl in a bright blue jacket came closer, looked at them carefully, and then asked, "Auntie, did you come for me?" At these words, Sarah burst into tears and couldn't stop for a long time. Her mother-in-law whispered something softly in her ear. Then they hugged and laughed through their tears. A week later, Sarah and Eleanor came to the children's home, which had become so familiar, together with Michael. But when they spoke to the director about the girl, she said she couldn't give her away. "How? Why?" exclaimed Eleanor. "We've already grown to love her. She recognizes us too. We're ready to start the adoption procedure. She has touched our hearts so much." "The thing is," sighed Mrs. Miller, explaining, "that Emily has a twin sister, Jessica. She wasn't out playing today because she was a little unwell. Both girls were brought to us from the reception center." The director continued, telling the tragic story. There was a wonderful, strong family. The father worked in the police. The mother was an accountant. She was on maternity leave after the twins were born. Something terrible happened to the father at work. The woman couldn't cope with the grief, started drinking, completely forgot about the children. If it weren't for the neighbors, something terrible could have happened. Mrs. Miller told how the neighbors had endured it for a long time, pitying the unfortunate widow, but then couldn't take it anymore and contacted social services. The social services representatives took the children. "You should have seen how they were brought to us. Thin, dirty, wild," the director lamented. "And the mother, when she found out, simply went and got married. Such a terrible story." "Poor girls," sighed Eleanor. "Such little ones, and they've been through so much." "Have you changed your minds?" the director asked, looking at them. "The girls are healthy without issues, and they have no other relatives." "Can we meet both girls?" Sarah asked timidly. "You know, I always put the children's interests first, and am most afraid of hurting their souls. They will see your interest, they will wait, hope, and they are so small, so wronged by fate." Mrs. Miller looked at them with concern. "What if you change your minds later or realize you're not ready for such a serious step? That would be a terrible blow for them." Michael's voice was muffled as if he was holding back strong emotions. "We won't change our minds. We will definitely take both girls. We are very determined." He looked at the director with confidence. "I don't think social services will have any reason to refuse us." Days began, filled to the brim with chores. But these chores were so pleasant. Both Sarah and Michael and Eleanor and even George found time to pop into the children's home. They hurried to see their daughters and granddaughters, Emily and Jessica. And then the long-awaited day arrived. Eleanor set a festive table, baked pies, and waited for her children with a fluttering heart. When the doorbell rang and the door opened, she clutched her heart and cried with happiness. All four were so joyful and cheerful, Michael with Sarah and their newly found daughters. A new life began, full of worries and problems. The young couple lived separately, but the grandparents often visited their beloved granddaughters. And then one day, Michael called his mother and said that on Sunday he and Sarah were inviting their parents over. He added in a mysterious voice that a big surprise awaited them. I wonder what they've planned, George mused aloud. It doesn't seem like there are any holidays coming up. Let's go and see, Eleanor smiled affectionately. They've been so busy lately with Sarah, I don't really know what with. But I've been constantly looking after the granddaughters. She added lovingly, they've grown so big, so independent. Sarah Bear is truly a wonderful mother, reasonably strict, and very loving. And so, Sunday arrived. When the parents entered their son's apartment, they gasped in surprise. In the middle of the room stood a large stroller in which lay two plump, rosy-cheeked infants. What is this? How is this possible? Was all Eleanor could utter, stunned by what she saw. Sarah and I decided that besides daughters, we also want sons. But we didn't get two sons. Michael smiled, looking at his parents. Here, Grandma and Grandpa, meet them. This is John and Katie. They are already 5 months old. These are our children. He looked at his mother. Sarah has decided to quit her job and dedicate herself entirely to the children. But she, Mom, can't do without your help. And yours too, of course, Dad. Oh, how happy I am, was all the proud grandmother of 4 grandchildren could say. How rich I am. I have 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson. She looked at her son and daughter-in-law. But I think we won't stop here. Michael put his arm around his wife's shoulders, looking into her eyes. Of course, darling, Sarah replied with a loving gaze. After all, children are such happiness.